Ladies and gentlemen, I thought we needed a little bit of a change of scenery, so today, for our reading session, we're at, where the Crucible Fight Club is, up on the roofs over here. Yeah, it's actually a really beautiful setting, just chilling over here. Maybe later, at some point in the future, when we come here, they'll actually be mid-fight. We'll be at the Fight Club, casually reading a book off in the corner, but... yeah, let's see what books we got on the agenda for today. Let us see. What have we? The last one in order that we've read was The Locked Room. I think I don't recall the locked... oh, yes, I recall the Locked Room. Yes. The Lunar Lorcan. That's a 4-page book. Let's not do that. Yeah, let's get all these long books out of here. The Mirror by Berdir Ren, something like that. The wind blew over the open plain, jostling the few trees within to move back and forth with the irritation of it. A young man in bright green turban approached the army and gave his chieftains terms for peace for the commander. He was refused. It was to be battle, the Battle of Ain Kalor. So the chief Imbez had decreed his open defiance, and his horsemen were at war once again. Many times the tribe had moved into territory that was not theirs to occupy, and many times the diplomatic approach had failed. It had come to this at long last. It was just as well with Mindothrax. His allies may win or lose, but he would always survive. Though he had occasionally been on the losing side of a war, never once in all his 34 years had he lost in hand-to-hand combat. The two armies poured like dual frothing streams through the dust, and when they met a clamor rang out, echoing into the hills. Blood, the first liquor the clay had tasted in many a month. Ooh, that's a beautiful-ass sentence right there. God damn, can we just take a moment to appreciate the imagery of that sentence? Blood, the first liquor the clay had tasted in many a month. Damn. Oh, that's not even the end of the sentence. Oh shit, there's more. Blood, the first liquor... well, yeah, that's not a complete sentence if it ended there. Okay, anyway. Blood, the first liquor the clay had tasted in many a month, danced like powder. Okay, I don't quite understand that last part of it, but the first liquor the clay had tasted in many a month, that just sounds really cool. The high and low battle cries of the rival tribes met in harmony as the armies dug into one another's flesh. Mindothrax was in the element he loved. After 10 hours of fighting with no ground given, both commanders called a mutual and honorable withdrawal from the field. The camp was positioned in a high-walled garden of an old burial ground, adorned by springtide blossoms. As Mindothrax toured the grounds, he was reminded of his childhood home. It was a happy and a sad recollection, the purity of childhood ambition, all of his schooling in the ways of battle, but tinged with memories of his poor mother. A beautiful woman looked down at her son with both pride and unspoken sorrow. She never talked about what troubled her, but it came as no surprise to any when she took the walk across the moors and was found days later, her throat slit open by her own hand. The army itself was like a colony of ants, newly shaken. Within a half-hour's time after the end of the battle, they had reorganized as if by instinct. As the medics, I think? Yeah, as the medics, not the medicos. Por los medicos... As the medics looked to the wounded, someone remarked with a measure of admiration and astonishment. "Look at Mindothrax. His hair isn't even out of place." "He is a mighty swordsman," said the attending physician. "The sword is a greatly overvalued article," said Mindothrax, nevertheless pleased with the attention. "Warriors pay too much attention to striking, and not enough in defending strikes. The proper way to go into battle is to defend yourself, and to hit your opponent only when the ideal moment arises." "I prefer a more straightforward approach," smiled one of the wounded. It is the way of the horsemen." "If it is the way of the Bajolsi tribes to fail, then I renounce my heritage, said Mindothrax, making a quick sign to the spirits that he was being expressive, not blasphemous. Remember what the great bladesman Gaiden Sunji said? The best techniques are passed on by the survivors. I have been in 36 battles, and I haven't a scar to show for them. That is because I rely on my shield, and then my blade, in that order. What is your secret? Yeah, you fucking sit there, hold up your shield, the other guy hits you, they kind of stumble for a second, and then you hit them a couple times, and then once they finish stumbling, you put your shield back up, and then you just repeat. Think of melee as a mirror. I look to my opponent's left arm when I am striking with my right. If he is prepared to block my blow, I do not. Why exert undue force? Mindothrax cocked an eyebrow. But when I see his right arm tense, my left arm goes to my shield. You see, it takes twice as much power to send force than it does to deflect it. When your eye can recognize whether your opponent is striking from above or at an angle, or in an uppercut from below, you learn to pivot and place your shield just to protect yourself. I could block for hours if need be, but it only takes a few minutes, or even seconds, for your opponent, used to battering, to leave a space open for your own strike. When was the last you've ever had to defend yourself? Asked the wounded man. I fought a man once for an hour's time. Oh, sorry. What was the longest you've ever had to defend yourself? Asked the wounded man. I fought a man once for an hour's time. God damn, I actually, in Elder Scrolls time, I fought much longer. Real life, God, no. He was tireless with his bludgeoning, never giving me a moment to do aught but block his strikes. But finally, he took a moment too long in raising his cudgel, and I found my mark in his chest. He struck my shield 1,000 times, and I struck his heart but once. But that was enough. That is a strong-ass shield. Side note. So he was your greatest opponent? Asked Asked the Medico. Is that actually a fucking thing? No. Oh, indeed not, said Mindothrax, turning his great shield so the silvery metal reflected his own face. There is he. The next day, the battle recommenced. Chief Imbes had brought in reinforcements from the islands to the south. To the horror and disgrace of the tribe, mercenaries, renegade horsemen, and even some reachmen, witches, were included in the war. As Mindothrax stared across the field as the armies assembled, putting on his helmet and readying his shield and blade, he thought again of his poor mother. What had tortured her so? Why had she never been able to look at her son without grief? Between sunrise and sundown, the battle raged. A bright blue sky overhead burned down on the combatants as they rushed against one another over and over again. In every melee, Mindothrax prevailed. A foe with an axe rained a series of strokes against his shield, but every one was deflected until at last Mindothrax could best the warrior. A spear maiden nearly pierced the shield with her first strike, but Mindothrax knew how to give with the blow, throwing her off balance and leaving her open for his counter-strike. Finally, he met a mercenary on the field, armed with shield and sword and a helm of golden bronze. For an hour and a half they battled. Mindothrax tried every trick he knew. When the mercenary tensed his left arm, he held back his strike. When his opponent rose his sword, his shield rose too, and expertly blocked. For the first time in his life, he was battling another defensive fighter. Stationary, reflective, with energy to battle for days if need be. Occasionally, another warrior would enter into the fray, sometimes from Mindothrax's army, sometimes from his opponent's. These distractions were swiftly dispatched, and the champions returned to their fight. But, why didn't the other dude just, fucking come up from behind? Or are you just, switching back and forth between the two? That's pretty embarrassing, not gonna lie. As they fought, circling one another, matching block for blow and blow for block, it dawned on Mindothrax that here, at last, he was fighting the perfect mirror. It became more a game, almost a dance, than a battle of blood. It was not until Mindothrax missed his own step, striking too soon, throwing himself off balance, that the promenade was ended. He saw, rather than felt, the mercenary's blade rip across him from throat to chest. A good strike, the sort he himself might have delivered. Mindothrax fell to the ground, feeling his life passing. The mercenary stood over him, prepared to give his worthy adversary the killing blow. It was a strange, honorable deed for an outsider to do, and Mindithrax was greatly moved. Across the battlefield, he heard someone call a name similar to his own. Jurifax! The mercenary removed his helmet to answer the call. As he did so, Mindithrax saw through the slits of his helmet his own reflection in the man. It was his own close-set eyes, red and brown hair, thin and wide mouth, and blunt chin. For a moment he marveled at the mirror, before the stranger turned back to him and delivered the death stroke. Jurifax returned to his commander and was well paid for his part in the day's victory. They retired for a hot meal under the stars in a garden by an old cairn that had previously been occupied by their foes. The mercenary was strangely quiet as he observed the land. "Have you been here before, Jurifax?" asked one of the tribesmen who had hired him. "I was born a horseman, just like you. My mother sold me when I was just a babe. I have always wondered how my life might have been different had I not been bartered away. I might never have been a mercenary." "There are many things that decide our fates," said the witch. "It is madness to try to see how you might have taken this turn, or that in the world. There are none exactly like yourself, so it is foolish to compare. But there is one," said Jurifax, looking to the stars. "My master, before he set me free, said that my mother had twin sons when I was born. She could only afford to raise but one child, but somewhere out there is a man just like me. My brother. I hope to meet him." You didn't kind of think that was a little sus, like fighting that dude? No? The witch saw the spirits before her and knew the truth that the twins had met already. She remained silent and stared into the fire, banishing the thoughts from her head, too wise to tell all. Damn, R.I.P. Wow. Imagine naming your fucking twin. I'm like, why name twins like with rhyming names in the first place, you know? That just doesn't feel very smart to me. The predecessors. Is this the next book that I have written down over here? It is not. Huh. Shit, have I read this before? Oh wait, maybe this is okay. Never mind. That's a Shivering Owl's book right there. Okay. But I do have the Posting of the Hunt on my list, and I don't appear to have that book. But I do have the Ransom of Zelek, so we'll do that for now. Oh, but this is Ancient Tales of the Dwemer, so we're not going to do that for now. I lie. Alright, this is a 5-page series. Fucking kill me, dude. What? 49 pages? Why are all the super long books? This is a whole fucking novel, dude. This is a whole goddamn novel. Oh my god. Oh, what the fuck? 88 pages? Oh my god. That is disgusting. Oh god, I'm really gonna end up saving the worst for last, huh? That is crazy. I guess we can do the rear guard and the red book. Okay, maybe not the red book of riddles. We can do the rear guard and the red kitchen reader. Okay. Wow, that is wild, dude. That might end up being like one of those books per episode. I was just... It's 100 pages. Like 49 pages? That's like how much I normally read in one episode. And then 55, that's a... This might end up being genuinely just 5 fucking episodes. 88 pages is crazy, dude. Crazy. Oh my god, that's crazy. Alright. That'll be a problem for later. The rear guard by Tennis Morl. The castle would hold. No matter the forces, the walls of Cascabel Hall would never fail. But that was small consolation for Menegar. He was hungry. In fact, he had never been so hungry. The well in the atrium of the fortress supplied him with enough water to hold there until the Fourth Era, but his stomach reminded Menegar minute to minute that he needed food. The wagon load of supplies mocked him. When his army, the forces of the King of Solitude, back to Solitude, had left Cascabel Hall, and he had manned the battlements as the rear guard to protect their retreat, they had left a wagon behind to supply him with enough food for months. It was not until the night after they left that he inspected the larder and found that nothing edible was in the wagon. Trunk after trunk was filled with netch armor from the army's incursion into Morrowind. Apparently, his Nord confederates had assumed that the lightly opaque material was hard tack in aspic. If Dunmer, whose caravan had been raided, knew about this, they would never be able to stop laughing. Menegar thought that his fellow mercenary and kinswoman, Arryn, would have found this amusing as well. She had spoken with great authority about netch leather, being an expert of sorts on light armor, but she had made a point to mention that it could not be eaten like other leather in occasions of hardship. You can eat other kinds of leather? What the fuck? Okay, sure. It was a pity she couldn't be there to enjoy the irony. Menegar thought savagely. She had returned to Morrowind even before the king's army had left, preferring a life as a wanted fugitive to a free existence in the cold of Skyrim. All the weeds in the courtyard had been devoured by the rearguard's 16th day manning Cascabel Hall. The entire castle had been scored, rotten tubbers in the mulch pile found and consumed, a dusty bouquet in the countess's bedchamber eaten. Almost every rat and insect but the most cunning infesting the castle walls had been tracked down and gobbled up. The castellan's chambers filled with acrid, inedible law books. What the fuck? Why are we trying to eat everything here, huh? Had yielded up a couple crumbs of bread. Menegar had even scrapped moss from the stones. There was no denying it. He would be dead from starvation before his army returned to break the ranks of the enemies who surrounded the fortress. The worst part, said Menegar, who had taken to talking to himself on only the second day alone in the castle. The second day, really, bruh? Is how close sustenance is. A vast arbor of golden apples stretched acre after acre near the castle walls. The sunlight cast a seductive gleam on the fruit, and the cruel wind carried sweet smells into Cascabel to torture him. Like most Bosmer, Menegar was an archer. He was a master of long and medium-distance shots, fighting, but in close quarters, as he would be if he dared to leave the castle and enter the enemy camp in the arbor. He knew he would not last long. I mean, if you're gonna starve to death, though, it's kind of worth the risk, don't you think? At some point, he knew he would have to try. Okay, yeah, fair. But he had been dreading the day. It was upon him now. Menegar put on the netch armor for the first time, feeling the powdery, almost velvet texture of the rendered leather against his skin. There was also a barely perceptive throb, which he recognized as the remnant nematocysts of the netch's venomous flesh, still tingling months after its death with domesticated poison. The combination made him feel energized. Arryn had described the sensation perfectly, just as she had explained how to defend herself while wearing netch leather armor. Under cover of night, Menegar crept out of the back gates of the castle, locking it behind him with a rather cumbersome key. He made for the arbor as quietly as he could, but a passing sentry coming behind a tree saw him. Remaining calm, Menegar did as he remembered Arryn had instructed, only moving after the attack had been launched. The sentry's blade glided against the armor and knocked to the left, throwing the young man off balance. That was the trick, as he understood it. You had to be prepared to be hit, and merely move with the blow, allowing the membranous armor to divert the energy away. The injury. I feel like that word should be energy. Like, I mean, obviously that is injury, but I feel like just within the sentence itself, the energy makes more sense. But whatever. Use your enemy's momentum against him. Or energy. Use your enemy's momentum against him, as Aaron used to say. There were several more close encounters in the arbor, but each swing of an axe and each thrust of a sword found purchase elsewhere. With handfuls of apples, Menegir ran the gauntlets back to the castle. He locked the back gate door behind him and fell into an orgy of eating. For week after week, the Bosmer stole out to gather his food. The guards began anticipating his raids, but he kept his schedule irregular and always remembered when attacked to wait for the blow, accept it, and then turn. Oddly similar books, I feel like. In such a way, he lived and survived his lonely vigil in Cascabel Hall. 4 months later, as he was preparing for another seizure of apples, Menegir heard a loud clamor at the front gate. Surveying the group from a safe distance on the battlements, he saw the shields of the King of Solitude, his ally the Count of Cascabel, and their enemy the King of Farun. Evidently, a truce had been called. Menegir opened the gates and the combined armies flooded the courtyard. Many of the knights of Farun sought to shake the hand of the man they had named the Shadow of the Arbor, expressing their admiration at his defensive skills and apologizing good-naturedly for their attempts to slay him. Only doing their job, you know. There's hardly an apple left on the vine, said the King of Solitude. Well, I started on the edges and worked my way in, explained Menegir. I brought back extra fruit to tempt the rats out of the walls so I could have a little meat as well. We've spent the last several months working out the details of the truce, said the king. Really quite exhausting. At any rate, the Count will be taking back possession of his castle now, but there is a small detail we need to work out. You're a mercenary, and as such responsible for your own expenses. If you had been a subject of mine, things might be different, but there are certain old rules of law that must be respected. Menegir anticipated the strike. The problem is, the king continued, you've taken a good deal of the Count's crops while here. By any reasonable computation, you've eaten an amount equal to, and likely exceeding your mercenaries' wages. Obviously, I would not want to penalize you for the excellent job you've done defending the castle in uncomfortable circumstances, but you agree that it's important that we observe the old rules of law, don't you? Of course, replied Menegir, accepting the blow. I'm delighted to hear that, said the king. Our estimation is that you owe the Count of Cascabel 37 imperial gold. Bro, you were defending this castle on your own for months for 37, not even 37 gold? That's fucking insane. Which I will gladly pay to myself, with interest, after the autumn tide harvest, said Menegir. There is more left on the vine than you suggest. The Kings of Solitude and Farun and the Count of Cascabel stared at the Bosmer. We agreed to abide to the strictest old rules of law, and I've had time to read a great many books over the time you were making your truce. In Third Era 246, during the reign of Uriel IV, the Imperial Council, in an attempt to clear up some questions of property rights in Skyrim during those chaotic days, decreed that any man without a liege who occupied a castle for more than 3 months would be granted the rights and titles of that estate. It's a good law, of course, meant to discourage absent and foreign landlords. Menegir smiled, feeling the now familiar sensation of a glancing strike diverting. By the rule of law, I am the Count of Cascabel. The rearguard's sons still hold the title of Count of Cascabel, and he grows the finest, most delectable apples in the Empire. Wow. Good for you, my dude. But also, why didn't they just, fucking stab him? Just say, no, I'm in charge. Get the fuck out. Die now. I don't know about that one, fam. I don't think that one's gonna slide all too often, but apparently it did this time. Alright, last book for the day. The Red Kitchen Reader by Simocles Quo. Though naturally modest, I must admit to some pleasure in being dubbed by our Emperor's father, the late Pelagius IV, as the finest connoisseur in Tamriel. He was also good enough to appoint me the first, and to this day, the only master of cuisine in the imperial court. Other emperors, of course, had master chefs and cooks in their staff, but only during the reign of Pelagius was there someone of rarefied tastes to plan the menus and select the finest produce to be served at court. His son Uriel requested that I continue in that position, but I was forced to graciously decline the invitation because of age and poor health. This book, however, is not intended to be autobiography. I have had a great many adventures in my life as a knight of fine dining, but my intention for this book is much more specific. Many times I have been asked, what is the best thing you ever ate? The answer to that is not a simple one. Much of the pleasure of a great meal is not only in the food. It is in the setting, the company, the mood. Eat an indifferently cooked roast or a simple stew with your one true love, and it is a meal to be remembered. Have an excellent 12-course feast with dull company, while feeling slightly ill, and it will be forgotten, or remembered only with distaste. Sometimes meals are memorable for the experiences that come before them. Fairly recently, in northern Skyrim, back in Skyrim, I had a bit of bad luck. I was with a group of fishermen observing their technique of capturing a very rare, very delicious fish called Merengar. The fish is found only far from shore, so it was a week's voyage, out beyond civilization. Well, we found our school of Merengar, but as the fishermen began spearing them, the blood in the water attracted a family of Dray, who capsized the boat and everyone on it. I managed to save myself, but the fishermen and all our supplies were lost. Sailing is not, alas, a skill I have picked up over the years, and it took me 3 weeks, with no provisions, to find my way back to the Kingdom of Solitude. I had managed to catch enough small fish to eat raw, but I was still delirious from hunger and thirst. The first meal I had on shore of Nordic roast boar, Jazz Bay wine, and yes, fillet of Merengar would have been excellent under any circumstances, but because of the threat of starvation I had faced, it was divine beyond words. Sometimes meals are even memorable for the experiences that follow them. In a tavern in Falastini, I was introduced to a simple peasant dish called kalopi, delicious little balls of flesh, thick with spices and juice, so savory I asked the proprietress whence they came. Mother Pascost explained that the kalopi were an arboreal rodent that fed exclusively on the most tender branches of the grot oak, and I was fortunate enough to be in Valenwood at the time of the annual harvest. I was invited to join with a small colony of Imga monkeys, who alone could gather these succulent little mice. Because they lived only on the slenderest branches of the trees, and only on the ends of those same branches, the Imga had to climb beneath them and jump up to pick the kalopi from their perches. Imga are, of course, naturally dexterous, but I was then relatively young and spry, and they let me help them. While I could never jump as high as they could, with practice, I found that if I kept my head and upper body rigid and launched off the ground with a scissors-like kick, I could reach the kalopi on the lowest branches of the tree. I believe I gathered 3 kalopi myself, though with considerable effort. To this day, I salivated at the thought of kalopi, but my mind is on the image of myself and several dozen imgas leaping around beneath the shade of the grot oaks. Then, of course, there are the rare meals memorable for what came before, after, and during the meal. Which brings me to the finest thing I ever ate, the meal that began my lifelong obsession with excellent cuisine. As a child growing up in Cheydinhal, I did not care for food at all. I recognized the value of nutrition, for I was not a complete dullard. Okay, but I cannot say that mealtime brought me any pleasure at all. Partly, of course, this was the fault of my family's cook. Wow, you guys have your own fucking cook. Lucky asses. Who believed that spices were an invention of the Daedra, and that good Imperials should like their food boiled, textureless, and flavorless. Though I think she was alone in assigning a religious significance to this, my sampling of traditional Cyrodiilic cuisine suggests that the philosophy is regrettably common in my homeland. Though I did not enjoy food per se, I was not a morose, unadventurous child in other respects. I enjoyed the fights in the arena, of course, and nothing made me happier than wandering the streets of my town with my imagination as my only companion. It was on one such jaunt of a sunny Fredas in mid-year that I made a discovery that changed my heart and my life. There were several old abandoned houses down the street from my own home. Oh god, don't tell me you went into Cheydinhal's abandoned house. I don't know if you want to go in there, buddy. And I often played around them, imagining them to be filled with desperate outlaws or haunted by hundreds of evil spirits. You're not too far off. I never had the nerve to go inside. In fact, had I not that day seen some other children who had delighted in teasing me in the past, I would never have gone in. But I needed a sanctuary. The Cheydinhal sanctuary? So I ran into the closest one. The house seemed to be as desolate on the inside as on the outside, further proof that no one lived there, and had not for some time. When I heard footsteps, I could only assume that the loathsome urchins I hoped to avoid had followed me in. I escaped to the basement. Okay, come on, we're finding some weird... we're, like, leading right to it now. I escaped to the basement, and from there past a broken-down wall that led to a well. I could still hear the footsteps above, and I decided that I was still loath to confront my tormentors. Knocking aside the rusty locks in the well, I slipped down below. The well was dry, but I discovered it was far from empty. There was a sort of sub-basement to the house. 3 large rooms that were clean, furnished, and evidently not abandoned at all. My senses told me someone was living in the house, after all. Not only my sense of sight, but my sense of smell. For one of the rooms was a large red-painted kitchen, and spread out on the coals of the oven was a roast, carved into small morsels. Passing a beautiful and appropriate bas-relief of a mother carving a roast for her grateful children. I beheld the kitchen and the wonders within, passing a beautiful and appropriate bas-relief of a mother carving a roast for her grateful children. That really does sound like the fucking Night Mother, like the image that they have in there, where she's like killing the children, but a very crazy misinterpretation. Like I said, food had never interested me before, but I was transfixed, and even now as I write this, words fail me in describing the rich aroma that hung in the air. It was like nothing I had ever smelled in my family's kitchen, and I was unable to stop myself from popping one of the steaming chunks of meat into my mouth. The taste was magical, the flesh tender and sweet. The flesh? Before I knew it, I had eaten everything on the stove, and I learned at that very second the truth that food can and should be sublime. After gorging myself and having my culinary epiphany, I was conflicted on what to do. Part of me wanted to wait down in that red kitchen until the chef returned. I don't think you want to do that. So I could ask him what his secret recipe was for the delicious meat. Part of me recognized that I had stolen into someone's house and eaten their dinner, and it would be wise to leave while I could. That was what I did. Time and again, I've tried to return to that strange, wonderful place, but Cheydinhal has changed over time. Old houses have been reclaimed, and new houses abandoned. I know what to look for on the inside of the house. The beautiful etching of a woman preparing to carve out a roast for her children. The red kitchen itself. Okay, that is absolutely that fucking abandoned house. I could be wrong, but I don't know, they say there's turnover, but I have never been able to find the house again. After a while, as I grew older, I stopped trying. It is better as it remains in my memory, the most perfect meal I ever ate. The inspiration for my life that followed all that was cooked up together with that fabulous meat right there in the red kitchen. I really, really, really think they're talking about the Cheydinhal Dark Brotherhood Sanctuary. Right there, like everything that they mentioned, like the mother like preparing a meal for the children or whatever, really looks like the door. I think he even mentioned that it was a door, right? The well, the beautiful etching of a woman preparing to carve out a roast for her children. Oh, I'm not sure, dude. I want to see what people on like fucking, I don't know. I don't even know what would mention it, but on the interwebs would think of this book right here. Yeah, everybody seems to be in agreeing that this is the Dark Brotherhood Sanctuary. They also mention that there's three large rooms, which I guess there are 3 large rooms. Oh, there's 3 different sections technically to the sanctuary, but there's more than 3 rooms. How one would normally define a room, but yeah. Apparently a bas relief, or whatever the fuck they described it as, however you pronounce that, is like a carving on a door. Yeah, so like the description doesn't match up perfectly, but it's definitely implying that. And also, well, the food involved in it is probably a human because of the vampire guy. Yeah, that dude's favorite meal was literally human that's impressive. How did he get by the door, though, is the real thing. Maybe he just like found his way in there separately. I'm taking it he probably also isn't from Cheydinhal, because there ain't a lot of houses. I feel like if you wandered into a house like that, like you're not gonna forget which one it was like that easily. But I don't know. I guess the man has Alzheimer's or something. But anyway, yeah, that's gonna do it for this video. So in the next video, we're gonna do another quest. I think didn't we go to a village that? Yeah, High Cross. We gotta go to High Cross. Pretty sure there was a quest that we. Yeah, we gotta go there and pick up the quest, right? Yeah, that's gonna do it for today, though. So, next video we're doing the quest at High Cross, and the video after that we'll continue reading. But until then, thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and as always, yeah, I'll burst in it. Woo!
Cause I don't wanna see the glow without you. Refuse to even leave my home without you. Or my brain's gonna explode without you. I don't even know how to cope without you. Cause I don't wanna see the glow without you. Refuse to even leave my home without you. Or my brain's gonna explode without you. I don't even know how to cope without you.